Good night, America, and it's time for your political maniacs. Tonight's maniac, our Attorney General. Jeff Sessions offered up a cutthroat endorsement Monday of separating undocumented children from their parents at the border. The Attorney General defended his statement by explaining that if you don't like the policy, then don't smuggle your children over the border. He went on to claim that the policy is a natural extension of the current practice of separating kids from their parents during arrests. Sessions has been on an illegal immigrant tear over the past weeks, warning of a mass influx occurring at the southwest border despite the president's recent claims that unauthorized border crossings have sharply declined. Let's talk about Jeff Sessions and his latest lunacy on immigration. And let's begin with the facts. The facts are pretty simple here. The president is right. Border crossing has decreased by 80 to 90% since he's taken office. Maybe it's his tough talk on the wall, or maybe, just maybe, America, it's a simple fact that people from El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Honduras, while they crave American freedom, would rather wait until President Trump is no longer in office. Let's take a listen to Jeff Sessions Monday announcing the increase of border enforcement and penalties. In the background, you will also hear protesters protesting Jeff Sessions and this draconian policy.
I have put in place a zero-tolerance policy for illegal entry on our southwest border. If you cross the border unlawfully, then we will prosecute you. It's that simple. If you smuggle illegal aliens across our border, then we will prosecute you. If you are smuggling a child, then we will prosecute you. And that child may be separated from you as required by law.
Now, let's be specific about Jeff Sessions and President Trump, or Jeff Sessions, which is very interesting, like that he continues to tote this line as he gets victimized by the president and literally cyberbullied by him on Twitter and I guess in life. But herein lies the problem with this policy. The ideal of separating families at the border, when these families have already gone through enough, seems to me just as a reason to add insult to injury. The new policy could flood, and on top of that, what he's also saying here is that anybody who crosses the border, right? If you cross the southern border unlawfully, then you'll be prosecuted. It's simple. That's what he said in the announcement of policy. He's imposing potential criminal penalties on the border crossing, which previously faced mainly civil, a civil deportation process. In this process, it would separate families and charge individuals with felonies for crossing the border. The new policy could overwhelm America's already stretched to the limit immigration courts, right, suffering from backlog and create a new detention space shortage for federal agencies and America. Here's the little silver lining in all of it, and prop up the private prison industry, because when there is a federal shortage in prisons, when there's no more federal penitentiaries, no more federal immigration centers to put them in, who do you think is going to do it? Of course, the private prisons are like, oh no, we have tons of space, and we'll take them if the price is right, using Americans' tax dollars to fuel a prison industrial complex that has caused America more pain than good. But I digress. I'm going to keep that over there for just a minute. Here's my take on this whole border crossing fake, and when I say fake news story, let me be very clear in defining fake news. The president makes it seem as though there are millions and millions and millions of people, including terrorists and people from Al-Qaeda, just running across the U.S. border as if as fifth graders frolicking on the playground. America, that's just not true. Our border, most of it is fenced, and where it's not fenced, we have border patrol that defend the border and make sure nobody crosses. So the president used a news story a couple weeks ago about a crusade, right? And here, let me be very clear. This crusade happens every year. It's not new. It's nothing different. It happens every year. Every year, citizens from Honduras, Nicaragua, and El Salvador, the three most violent countries on earth, to get their voices heard, leave their homes, and they take a pilgrimage from their hometowns and their home countries to the Mexican border on foot. Why they do it? To raise concern about the fact that they live in one of the most violent countries on earth, and the globalized world, the developed world, could care less. And remind you, these three nations are what one would argue in America's sphere of influence, right? Just like one would argue that North Korea sits in China's sphere of influence, or, Croatia sits in France's sphere of influence. So these three countries, the most violent countries on earth, could we as a country, we as a nation, we as the global leader of the world, the people that believe in world peace, instead of spending these billions of dollars, America, building this wall, can literally send that money to fight violence in El Salvador, to fight violence in Honduras, and to fight violence in Guatemala. If we really, hear me out, people, if we really want to stop illegal border crossing, instead of dealing with the people crossing the border illegally, that's a symptom of a larger problem, violence and carnage in their countries. So let's work on solving the disease, violence, and carnage in their countries. Then they won't want to cross the border. And it'll actually be cheaper for us to create peace in these three countries than it would be to build the president's pointless wall. But I digress. Okay? And I'm going to deal with this illegal immigration problem. The president, when he first got elected to office, America, had an opportunity. He had an opportunity to bring Democrats and Republicans to the table and truly find a solution to America's immigration woes, dealing with the 11 million individuals here living undocumented, and also finding out a way to create some peace and stability in Central America to decrease the number of border crossings that happen on the Mexican border. Instead, what this president did was the opposite. Beyond not fulfilling a campaign promise of building a wall and having Mexico pay for it, this president failed to sit down with Democrats and Republicans and hammer out a real solution. So because there is no solution to our broken immigration system, here's what you got. You have an attorney general who's loosey-goosey with the rules and is so insistent on penalizing and hurting women and children who want nothing more than to breathe the freedom of America. These women and children are no different than the women and children that entered Ellis Island. They're no different than the women and children that sat in Japanese internment camps. They're no different, America, than the many, many, many individuals who came to this country seeking America, the American dream, and seeking freedom. We've got to figure out a solution that works for all people, not just the chosen few and not just the demagogues.